Good evening, everyone. I'm honored to be the first candidate to speak here tonight. There's many excellent ones here, and I wish you all the best tonight and in the election. My name is Dylan Menadal. I'm a sophomore management major in the School of Business. I've previously been the Avery Point treasurer, which is essentially the equivalent position of comptroller here. I've dealt with the same SBAC issues that Rashida has dealt with recently. Congratulations on getting your budget passed. You may know me as the guy behind hashtag Tampon Time, and along with Chief of Staff Aleka Khan, we're working on getting that taken care of after we've ran into some bumps recently, but we got our $20,000 budget passed at the last Senate. As far as actually being your comptroller, I plan to fix the budget projection issues that we talked about at Senate last night. It got a little heated, but I think that it was a very healthy conversation, and I think that with my expertise, my capabilities, my ambitions, I think that I can best represent the undergrads here, the undergrads all over the campus, here at Storrs, by fighting for inclusivity of all genders, races, and beliefs. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dylan. I'd like to invite Sia onto the stage to give your opening statement. You have 2 minutes to do so.
Hello? Hello? I'm on? Okay. Good evening, everyone. So my name is Siashi Sadani, but most of you know me as Sia. My experience and ideas make me the most qualified person for this position as comptroller. I'm currently the only candidate on the USG Executive Board, and I serve as our PR director. But I'm also a member of our funding board. Not only that, I'm also the co-CFO of a Tier 2 organization, and I understand the implications of student funding. I also understand the implications of being responsible for student fees because I'm on the executive board. I also understand the implications of the funding system because I'm on the funding board. With USG and as comptroller, I would want to prioritize Tier 2 funding and also staying accountable for our internal spending. By doing so, I want to, in a sense, trim the fat, and to elaborate on that, introduce guidelines for committee spending and hold ourselves accountable and hold ourselves to the same standards that we do for Tier 2 organizations. By doing so, I want to advocate for the student body and develop a relationship with them. And I hope that you will stand with me and vote for me. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much to both candidates. We have our first question. Dylan, you will go first to answer. Yes, actually, Sia, you're going to be the first to answer. You have 2 minutes to answer. As comptroller, it is imperative that you fully understand the funding board policies. What steps will you take to ensure that you're knowledgeable of the policies and procedures in regards to funding?
Thank you for the question. So currently I've actually been a member on funding board for the past semester, and by doing so, part of my job is to review funding requests for equipment and also understand the funding policies. So by doing so, through my experience with funding board, I'll continue to review the funding policies and continue to ask questions, develop a relationship with our bookkeepers, and continue to develop a relationship with our current comptroller in order to understand what initiatives to take and what funding policy, in order to better understand the funding policies. I apologize. Thank you.
Thank you, Sia. Dylan, the same question to you. I'll repeat it again. As comptroller, it is imperative that you fully understand the funding board policies. What steps will you take to ensure that you are knowledgeable of the policies and procedures in regards to funding? You have 2 minutes.
Okay, thank you. I believe that I have a keen experience with funding board because at Avery Point, I was the treasurer, which essentially at a branch campus, that means that you are the funding board. There's no funding board there. There's no funding board chair. There's no one that's on the funding board. I was the judge, jury, and executioner for the funding board there. I determined which tier twos got what. which committees got what, and what the amounts were. And going forward, I think that I can use that to work with the future funding board director. This year we had an excellent one. I don't know if Lisette is here tonight, but I believe that developing a relationship, as Director Sadani said, we must work with all of our committees much better next year. I think that we need to work with funding board especially to make sure that all of our tier 2s are taken care of responsibly and everyone gets the best budget possible. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is for you, Dylan. You will be answering first, 2 minutes, same process. Based on your experience in USG, what are your qualifications to run for comptroller?
In USG, like I said, at Avery Point, I was the treasurer, which is essentially comptroller. So I believe that I've already really done this before. I've dealt with creating a budget. It's the exact same one that Rashida had to create with Dan. I'm sorry, can you repeat the question real quick? Got distracted.
Absolutely. The question is, based on your experience in USG, what are your qualifications to run for comptroller? Okay. And
also, as a member of the Student Services Committee, I have passed a $20,000 budget just for tampon time. It was a unanimous vote. We worked really hard on that. Erica, thank you very much for your help. And thank you to everyone in here who's in Student Services Committee. And I think that that's something that my competitor does not have. I understand she has a budget for PR, and I also understand that that budget has only been used for pens, I believe, if that's correct. As a senator, I've already spent or plan to spend $20,000 just for this pilot program for tampons and pads. Thank you.
Same question for you, Sia. 2 minutes to answer. Based on your experiences in USG, what are your qualifications to run for comptroller?
Well, first, congrats, Dylan, Senator Mandel, on your work on tampon time. I think that's truly amazing. In my experience in USG, I've served, obviously, on the executive board as PR director, and I've had a very diverse set of skills and experiences. Through my work with PR, I've worked with each one of the committee chairs, and I've not only seen kind of how they outreach, but also how their budgets work. And because of that, that's kind of where my platform stems from, with focusing on committee budgets and internal spending, and introducing guidelines for us and holding us to the same standards as we do for tier 2s. But not only that, not only with my work through exec, I also serve as a member of funding board and work on developing our relationship with tier 2s, ensuring that we are allocating our funds efficiently and correctly. And as Dylan mentioned, with PR, and hopefully being able to do more outreach this semester and kind of use my funds more efficiently. Thank you.
We're now going to allot 2 minutes for open discussion between the candidates. You are free to go back and forth and discuss that question.
No disrespect intended, Director Sadani, but your platform wants to make us run more like a tier 2. I don't understand how that could work out. We are tier 3 for a reason. Our job is to run the tier 2s as far as what their budgets are, determine what amounts they actually get. And your experience as PR director in USG, I'm not sure how much that would relate to comptroller, the position of comptroller, because it's not a traditional position to begin with. And I don't really understand what your responsibilities are now that have anything to do with running a budget for not only tier 3s, but all our tier 2s.
So that's a really valid point, Dylan. Thank you for that. So actually, with my experience with PR, it's not just focused on outreach. Through that, I've been able to see how each committee spends their money. And through our weekly meetings in exec, Comptroller Johnny we've talked a lot about SFAC and about the budget and how we can improve on spending. I think through my work in events, I have seen where the money goes. I have seen how the money is spent and how much we actually do spend of it. And through that, that's why I really want to focus on our committees and ensuring that we have proper regulations. So not running USG as a tier 2, but developing relationships with Tier 2 organizations. I think that's very important, and also focusing on what we can do internally.
Sia, I'm sorry, Director Sadani. Again, I'm not certain that working with Rashida or talking to Rashida, to quote you, about the budget is something that makes you qualified through USG because, again, with respect, you haven't actually created a budget. You haven't worked directly with Dan and Rish to create a budget to determine who gets what. You haven't worked with each committee chair in a manner that would determine what they actually get. You work with them, I understand, in exec, which is excellent experience, but...
I'm going to have to cut you off. Time is over. Yep. I am going to pass it off to Alyssa, who will ask you the third question.
So, Sia, you're going to go first for this question. So if the fiscal year 17 and fiscal year 18 budget continues as it is planned right now, there will have to be significant cuts made to student funding. How will you ensure that USG budget does not begin to dip into a deficit while ensuring that student group funding is not in jeopardy?
So thank you for the question, Alyssa. In order to avoid this deficit, I think it's really important to make the appropriate cuts, and I think the cuts should also be from internally through USG, but also it is our responsibility to ensure that we are using funds efficiently, and that we're also prioritizing Tier 2 funding. And then by doing so, that's why I do want to introduce a set of guidelines for committee chairs to follow in order to ensure that committee chairs and that USG is spending money wisely, and then focus then also on how we can allocate that money to Tier 2s. Thank you.
How will you ensure that the USG budget does not begin to dip into a deficit while ensuring that student group funding is not in jeopardy?
I think it's clear that USG needs to focus more on a conservative approach. As Dan talked about last night, we're going down a slippery slope in terms of our spending. We had one committee chair last night very eloquently argue for $2,000 extra. They got it, but then as the slippery slope goes, another committee chair asked for another $2,000. I'm sorry, a cut going forward if you plan on being conservative and cutting these budgets. It sounds to me like you only want to cut the committee budgets. I think it's important that we cut our own and we also cut the funding board's budget as well. Thank you.
Sia, you will have a minute to respond, and then Dylan, you will have a minute to respond after that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dylan. I think you brought up a very valid point about this conservative approach, and I do agree with the fact that we do need to focus on committees, but I also strongly believe that we do have to develop a relationship with Tier 2 organizations, because at the end of the day, students are paying $45 per semester, $90 an hour. This is their money, and we need to make sure that we are allocating money efficiently and are spending wisely. We are giving the student body what they want. They are our priority. And then from there, then we can focus on committee chairs and making sure that we are spending that accurately and efficiently. Thank you.
As a Tier 2 treasurer, I don't understand, how can you implement guidelines for Tier 2 organizations to receive funding? What kind of guidelines are you referring to? And you also mentioned guidelines for committees. What kind of guidelines do you mean that they should follow?
So let me kind of clear that up. So I wouldn't, my goal with guidelines isn't for Tier 2s, but it's more so for committee chairs to follow. So I think through my work with PR, I've kind of seen how events have been handled and how they've, what kind of outreach has been done. I think some of those guidelines would include, having an advertising plan, a detailed explanation of kind of what the event is for, who will be there, how will they, if it's an honors event, things like that. So the guidelines are more specifically for USG and not for Tier 2 organizations, as we already hold them to such a high standard with the 6 weeks deadline for funding requests, submitting informational budget, whereas within USG, we don't exactly have that. Thank you.
Okay, so we're now going to move into closing statements. So you each will have 2 minutes, and Dylan, you can deliver yours first.
First off, I want to thank everyone here for coming, senators, exec members, everyone else who's not in USG here, committee members. I look forward to speaking with you all afterwards if you have any questions. And when you're making your voting choice, I encourage you to look at the experience regarding what a comptroller actually does and the accomplishments of each candidate and the capabilities of each candidate to actually make that happen. I want to make it clear that just as Rashida did last night very eloquently and very bravely against the Senate, who's frankly turning against her, I will fight for my budgets. I want to best represent all of you and all other undergraduates during my tenure as comptroller. And I want to make it clear that your student fee revenue will be best used with me as your comptroller because I care more about all of you in this room and all other undergrads here than I do about this position, really, to be honest. It's about all of you, and it's about our student fee revenue. That's really all the USG is about. That's all the comptroller position is about, making use of our student fee revenue. And I think that I can do that best for you. So with that said, have a good night, everyone, and have a good night. I'll get started.
You have 2 minutes too. So thank you, Senator Mendenhall, for an absolutely great debate. I loved hearing your views and your opinions too. I just wanted to thank everyone for coming out tonight. Your support means so much to both of us. I just would like to reiterate that through my experience, through exec, through funding board, also as a CFO of a Tier 2 organization, I understand the implications of our funding system, and I want to fight and develop a relationship with our student body. That is what USG is for. We are here to advocate for you. We are here to be there for you, and that is what I want to do. So thank you for your time, and make sure to come out and vote from March 1st to March 2nd. We'll have a voting booths outside or in the union, so please come out. Thank you so much.
Both of you.
Can't put my water down.
Okay, so we're going to begin the opening statements. So you each are going to have 2 minutes, and then you will begin.
Thank you. Hello, everyone, and thank you for taking the time to attend tonight's debate. It's great to see so many people actively participate in electing their student leaders. I'd also like to thank the Elections Oversight Committee for bringing this event together. My name is Vendopal, and I'm here tonight to tell you why I would be your best choice for Vice President of the undergraduate student body. For those who may not know, the role of the Vice President centers primarily on helping the organization function smoothly from the inside. Well, in my 3 years with the undergraduate student government, I've gathered a lot of experience with internal affairs. I joined USG my first semester and served as a senator who had the great honor of going to Texas for the Conference of Student Government Associations. The purpose of the conference was to learn from other student governments across the country and bring back fresh, new ideas to UConn. I came back with the idea for a mentorship program within USG, one geared towards freshman members so that they would never feel isolated or left out by the older members of the organization. With the help of the then Vice President, I brought this program to life, Leaders Guiding Leaders. To this day, LGL has flourished as a program that has made sure USG helps retain newer members and helps everyone find their place within the organization. A new aspect I hope to bring to this role actually ties in closely with my running mate, Andrew Stern's external platform. I believe the Vice President shouldn't be limited to staying within the organization. After all, our members come from various walks of life and different parts of campus. By being a Vice President that puts his money where his mouth is, so to speak, and actually attends various cultural events, club meetings, and team practices, I hope to bridge the disconnect between USG and other student orgs. If USG grows to accommodate more diverse perspectives, well, I consider that a great side effect. My experience in USG has been primarily focused on my committee, Academic Affairs, and I've served on the Open Educational Resource Task Force, and I've worked to make textbooks free in introductory classes, saving students over $600,000, and hopefully expanding it to millions. To wrap up, I'm excited to be here tonight, and I hope we have a very spirited debate.
Okay, Lizette, you also have 2 minutes for your opening statement.
Thank you, Ben, for such a wonderful welcome. I would too like to echo the thoughts. Thank you, everyone who came out. It is truly, truly great to see so many people interested and invested in electing their next student leaders, as we are here to represent you, and it's important that you get a say in it and you get to hear what we have to say. So, with that, my involvement with USG began last year when I began as funding board chair. I didn't really know what I was getting into, but I'm so glad that I did. USG has taught me so much, and I have been able to bring so much to USG. I'm excited to be able to continue bringing everything and improving USG with my running mate, Irma Valverde, who's the current vice president of USG, and we are excited to work on continuing the current administration and moving it forward so that we can help to bridge some continuity between years without too much unsettle and too much disruption. Through campus involvement, I have been involved in multiple Tier 2 organizations as well as administrative committees that work towards bettering the university not only in student life, but also in student academics. To name one, I am part of the dressage team, a very proud member and a very competitive member of the dressage team, so I understand the unique demands of being in a club sport and time management that is dedication towards working in a club sport like that and understanding the needs and the time commitment that is needed between being a student and also being a club member. So, besides that, another huge, huge involvement for me is the Whimsy Learning Community. I would not be here where I am today without the Whimsy Learning Community. They are an extremely amazing group of women who has brought me to this point and has encouraged me to be where I am today. I am so excited that I am able to bring such good ideas from the Whimsy community, where they work on supporting one another and creating a very, very strong community as being women in math, science, and engineering, and bringing that towards being here in USG organization. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your responses. I'll go into the first question. This will be for Lisette. What goals do you hope to accomplish as vice president? And you have 2 minutes.
As Vice President, I hope to continue to support the current goals that the administration worked towards, such as securing state funding, working towards a safer campus, and open source textbooks, which are huge, huge aspects of being a student here at UConn. But I also hope to continue not only those ideas, but bring about successful funding policies and improvement towards the funding policies, where obviously I've been an expert for the past year, and working with admins and students in the time of turmoil that we face on the outside, and making sure every student feels secure on the UConn campus. This is our community, and it is important that we support everyone. We can't be successful students without having a successful community to support one another. Furthermore, we hope to work on parking policies, as I'm sure everyone knows the frustrations of working with parking. So besides that, I'd like to touch more on the funding policies, which are a huge, huge aspect of USG. Most students on this campus know USG through the funding policies and the Tier 2 organization funding they receive. I have worked tremendously and tirelessly this semester and last semester to improve the funding policies and improve the funding system and create a transparency between USG and the student organizations so that they best know how their student fee money is being used and how to be able to secure the USG funding in an efficient and timely, hassle-free manner. So working towards better funding policies is a huge, huge topic, but I also hope to be able to bring better involvement internally into USG. We need to be a stronger organization internally in order to be able to support our constituents that we represent. They are the ones who elect us, and we need to be able to serve them. And through that, we need a strong, strong community internally in order to support them. That's all.
Okay, then I'll repeat the question one more time. What goals do you hope to accomplish as vice president? You have 2 minutes.
Thank you very much. So as Vice President, I want to continue a lot of the groundwork that I laid down as Academic Affairs Chairman this year and last year. So I've had extensive experience working directly with the Open Educational Resource Task Force that comprises all the administrators that have taken on the responsibility of bringing open source, free textbooks to various classes across UConn's campus. By continuing my work with Vice Provost of Libraries Martha Bedard, by continuing my work with Director Advising Dr. Katrina Higgins, by continuing work with the entire task force, I believe we can bring affordable textbooks to every introductory course that this university has to offer, funded through grant money and completely free to students. That's one issue that I really want to push. Another issue is fixing the retention rate of USG. In this year especially, we've seen a noticeable lack of retention within the organization. Now, I'm not sure what the exact cause of this is, but as Vice President, you can rest assured that I'm going to find out and I'm going to fix it. So what's happening? We have an election where senator seats are no longer being filled, even though we're opening more. We're getting committee members not returning to committee because they don't feel like their work is being listened to. I don't know if that lives up to your definition of inclusivity, but the executive committee this year laid out 3 words that sum us up. It's inclusive, collaborative, and effective. And I feel we have not been, that third one especially, we've not been effective in promoting the model that we set for ourselves. So by fixing the inside, we can improve the outside. And like I said earlier, a vice president should not just be limited to the members of his or her own organization. A vice president should actively reach out to various groups, various cultural demographics, various organizations, and recruit people to USG to bring a more diverse perspective to the organization. And I'm not just talking about Senate, because people focus on elected seats, but what they don't realize is a lot of students don't want to go through an election process or do all this. They just want to make a tangible change on campus, which we can encourage them to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we'll have an open discussion between the two candidates. So with that, you'll have 1 minute to respond, and then you'll have 1 minute to respond. Well, I do agree with Ben that retention is huge and that we did suffer this year in being effective in our retention matters. First of all, we have to start internally in order to get retention. There has to be something why people are leaving. It's not that we didn't necessarily have people signing up, because our entrance forms were pages long and we printed tons of election packets. However, there has to be something internally that we have to work towards to be able to keep the students here and to help them bring about change. We have to have a support system that helps them supports their ideas and helps them bring them to fruition, so that they are able to be able to stay and be proud of their work here and hopefully have an investment in staying with USG.
I absolutely agree with that. While we do have to focus on retention from a perspective of making people feel welcome in the organization, I also feel the organization has to be spearheaded by leadership that gives people a purpose. When the organization strives towards a common goal, people can find their own niche positions to serve functions within it. So I believe that Andrew Stern and I have laid out a very clear plan and have already put into effect some of the aspects of our plan, regardless of how this election turns out, to make USG have a single, clear-minded goal that all members can contribute towards achieving. Thank you.
Thank you, both candidates. We're going to move on to the next question. Then, you will go first, 2 minutes to answer. For certain circumstances, you and the president may come to a disagreement on an issue. How will you handle this issue?
Thank you. Andrew Stern and I have worked very closely over the last 3 years that we've spent in this organization. Right off the bat, as freshmen, Andrew, me, and the Chief Justice at the time served on the Community Standards Subcommittee, where we tried to improve student representation on the community board where sanctions are delivered to students on campus. Up until that point, this hadn't even been an issue that was brought up before, and I think the fact that Andrew and I sat on that task force as freshmen shows our deep-seated commitment to making this happen. And actually, just this semester, community standards legislation was passed through the Senate, showing that if you put your mind to a certain agenda for 3 years, it will happen, and we can make it happen. Andrew and I have had our fair share of disagreements as well. Andrew has served with me on the Academic Affairs Committee, where we've shared different views on whether it was fiscally responsible to keep the library open. Eventually, the committee came to a consensus that yes, we should expand library hours to 2 a.m. and keep it open 24 hours during finals week. But that wasn't to say that Andrew and I didn't have a lot of spirited debate over the years as to whether that was effective or not. So, like I said, disagreements happen, especially between two strong leaders like Andrew and myself. But in the end, compromise is the right option, and when we keep the students first, I think it's very easy to come to a consensus. Thank you.
Thank you for your answer. Lisa, you have 2 minutes to answer the same question. I'll repeat it once more. For certain circumstances, you and the president may come to a disagreement on an issue. How will you handle that issue?
I am with Ben in that disagreements will happen. As funding board chair, I have had my fair share of disagreements, if you could say that, not only with the administration, but also with student groups. I am well versed in being able to handle the disagreements, and I do agree with Ben in that the best situation is always compromise. There's always a compromise that can be reached, and whether that is giving on one issue, not necessarily giving, but hopefully meeting a middle ground that suits best both people in, or both groups in what the desired outcome is sought. So with the president, with my running mate, Emma Valverde, I feel that we both have an equal, both have strong personalities, but yet are ready to come to certain agreements on things that we may disagree on. So handling the conflict between us, I feel like will not be an issue, but if it does arise, I am fully able to work towards compromise, as my previous experience has shown this year. Every single day in that USG office, I am making compromises with groups and with the administration and with myself even, morally. But I do feel that the compromises that I make are the ones that will provide the best outcome for all parties involved. Each will have 1 minute for open discussion, and Ben, you can go first.
Thank you. So how would you say you would overcome the lack of experience that you face coming into this candidacy when Andrew Stern and I have a combined 6 years of experience, me as a senator, as a chairman, and as an executive member? I've interacted with all three aspects of USG. I've interacted with fellow senators, I've coordinated committee members, and I've served faithfully on the executive committee for the last 2 years. This has given me a lot of exposure to administration, to students, to both elected and non-elected student officials within USG. So I just wanted to know how you were going to overcome this noticeable lack of experience.
It is a completely fair question, Ben. Well, experience can't be measured in years necessarily with me. It can definitely be measured in the amount of hours that I spend in the USG office. It is almost a full-time job on top of being a full-time out-of-state student maintaining here on scholarship, therefore maintaining a certain GPA while being here on scholarship. I have dedicated myself tirelessly and have been in the office at 7 a.m. some mornings all the way until 10 p.m. at night. So while my years can't necessarily be measured, and it is only 1 year, I will fully admit that, my hours can definitely be measured. Sometimes it amounts to nearly 35 hours a week in the USG office, dedicating myself to funding board and to bettering this organization so that we can best serve the student groups who have had the most interaction with. So, thank you, Ben.
Lisette, this question is for you, and it's very similar to the one you just answered, so we will allow you more time to respond on that, and I'll read you the question first. So as Vice President, you will be required to know the function of USG as a whole, and as this is your first year as a USG member, how have you integrated in the organization, and based on your experience as a funding board chair, how will you assume the Vice Presidential seat? You have 2 minutes and then a 1 minute follow-up discussion.
So bringing forward from funding board, I am obviously used to communicating with student groups as well as communicating with USG executive, as well as communicating with the staff in the office who help run USG. So I'm excited to be able to bring forth all of these different relationships that I have developed, especially the genuine relationships that I've developed with the student bookkeepers as well as our professional staff in the office, because they are, let's be honest, the wheels that make this train turn. So I'm very excited that I have developed those relationships with them and will be able to continue working with them as they are the internal cogs of USG. I'm also excited that as funding board chair, I've had multiple interactions with tons of student groups on this campus. I've never even knew that we had so many student groups on campus with so many different purposes, but I'm excited to say that I've had such great experience interacting with them and working towards resolving conflicts with them that I hope to be able to bring that experience towards working towards conflicts, not necessarily always conflicts, in USG internally, and working towards creating, again, a support system that can best support not only our senators, our executives, our student staff, and our professional staff, but then that way we can best support the undergraduate student body that we serve.
1 minute for an open discussion, then you may start.
So, on this campaign trail, my running mate Andrew Stern and I have visited a number of student organizations, and we've asked them to voice their concerns and what issues they've had with USG, especially this year, to see what we can fix and how we can improve student funding and USG's dynamic with Tier 2 organizations. And I think the number one issue that's been brought up by almost every student group that we've spoken with has been a noticeable lack of communication between the funding side of USG and their Tier 2. A lot of CFOs have been noticeably frustrated, especially this year, with how complicated the funding system is, how few results they're getting, and how long it takes for even a simple email response. So I would just like to say that Andrew and I value communication. We've taken the time to go to so many groups' meetings over these last few months. We've taken the time to sit down and speak with their executive boards. I think this is how you establish communication. It's not just an email after 2 weeks. It's taking the time to step out of your comfort zone, going to a group that you've never been to, and sitting down and speaking with them.
So this question is for Ben, and it is based on, sorry, this just doesn't make sense. Just give me a minute. So you've been the academic affairs chair since your sophomore year, correct? So how have you changed or improved how academic affairs operates, and what will that experience bring to being vice president? And just, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you. It's a fantastic question, one that I love to speak about for anyone who's talked to me about AC affairs. When I took over the committee, the budget was bloated, things weren't getting to the students as they were supposed to, initiatives were being dropped. In my time as chairman, not only have I grown the committee from a roughly 6 to 7 member committee to at its peak a 22 member committee. Not only have I done that, I've also shaved the budget down from the mess that it once was to a much more fiscally responsible and efficient budget that actually gets more interactions with the students and more outreach events done with less money. So I feel this kind of responsibility that comes with being a steward of student fee money is something that I've really learned as an executive member of USG. Academic affairs, as any member will tell you, is an amazing committee to serve on. We've worked very closely with administration. We've worked very closely with USG leadership over the last 2 years. I see many committee members' faces in the audience right now, which is great to see. They fiercely defended our budget last night at Senate, just because of a slight misunderstanding, I want to say, but it was great to see all the committee members come up and defend their committees so faithfully. I think it just speaks volumes as to how a committee can grow once it receives the right type of leadership. And that's the kind of leadership I hope to bring to the position of vice president. Not one that steers people the way that I want to go. One that allows people to come in and tell me what they want to do and then push them in the right direction to get their goals accomplished. I've always been not a hands-off leader. I don't like the word hands-off, but I do like the word macro-managing. Yeah, because I like to think I do the opposite of micromanaging. I will follow up with you, but I won't push you to do what I want. I really honestly put faith in the committee members to accomplish our committee's collective goals, and that's what I bring to USG as a whole, this kind of sense of collectivism, like we're all working towards one thing.
Okay, so now there will be 1 minute for open discussion.
I do have to applaud Ben because, as I feel, academic affairs is definitely one of the most important committees that we do have in USG, as we are all here for a degree, as much as we on Friday nights would like to forget that sometimes. So, and while AC affairs has been a great committee, Ben, I would just like to touch upon your outreach events that you've had, such as, I know, care packages, which were wildly successful last semester.
Thank you.
However, I'd like to have you describe to me, I guess, how some of the more outreach events that you guys have benefited students in achieving their degrees here at UConn. While a care package is very nice to receive during finals week, there has to be a certain amount, I guess, of more support that I would necessarily want to see for students.
Absolutely, and just 2 semesters ago, we funded an open source textbook symposium, which encouraged students to come out, listen to an open panel debate about how open source educational resources would benefit them as students and foster a more academic environment on campus. Not only do we do that, this semester we're also funding a series of info panels designed to enhance the academic atmosphere and encourage intellectual discourse on campus.
Thank you both. You guys both will have 2 minutes for closing statements. Lisette, you can go first.
Thank you, Ben, for definitely helping me through my first time. But thank you again, everyone, for turning out. It is really great to see so many faces here and so many people invested in watching the future of USG take hold. As again, this is your undergraduate student body, student government is your organization as undergraduates. We are here to represent you and to be the voice of your collective thoughts and inspiration, anything, all your collective ideas and whatnot can come through USG, and I hope to bring that, inspire that within our members, that they can achieve whatever they want speaking for the student body, and to be able to support them and let them create change on the UConn campus. We need to be the best organization we can be internally, which means supporting our members, and that be the executive branch, the judiciary, our bookkeepers, our student staff, and of course our senators who are there at the base level, touching base always with our students and with their constituents and seeing what they need. It also involves in supporting committee members and letting them know that they are such an integral part of this organization so that we can best, again, bring about change for the undergraduate student body. So it is really good that all of you were able to be here and turn out, and I'm hoping that you will elect me and Emma Valverde so that we can best support the undergraduate student body by creating the best organization we can internally. And that starts with developing better funding policies, which are some of the greatest reach we have with student bodies, and working with admins and students so that we can create a better connection and that they can achieve their academics here, but also grow personally within themselves so that they can graduate a successful person, which is what we're all here for college for. Besides having fun on Friday nights, and maybe every other night of the week, I don't know what you do, but to also be able to support you academically so that you are ready to enter the real world. Thank you.
Then you will now have 2 minutes for your closing statement.
Thank you very much. And as Lisette said, thank you all so much for actually sticking around for this. This is the biggest turnout I've seen at any USG debate I've been to, which is awesome. Also kind of nerve-wracking, but that's fine. I think a vice president can only be good when he or she believes in their president. And I believe in the initiatives that Andrew Stern has said, because Andrew Stern follows through with his initiatives. It's that simple. We need to bring a certain level of genuineness back to the organization. We are students and we are student org. Our only role is to be advocates for the student body and kind of act as a liaison between the administration, the town, and the students. We all fit into this large-scale dynamic, and I think people start to lose sight of that when they let their personal differences or their personal gain get involved. The way Andrew Stern and I lead, as we've said, has been extremely successful. Our experience has spanned back 3 years and has touched the lives of so many students around campus. And I believe we're the leaders that USG can look up to and rally around to bring real change to UConn's campus. Thank you all. Have a great night.
All right. Thank you both for your time. So we are now going to begin the debate for the presidential ticket. So if those candidates can please make their way to the stage and we can begin. Alrighty, so we will each have you give a statement of position. We allocated 10 minutes for you, so Emma, if you would like to go first.
Hello, everybody.
Takes a little bit.
Okay, there we go. Hopefully it'll start.
soon. All right, so I just want to start off by first thanking Ben for stepping in for Andrew. I know that he had something happen back home, so I send my condolences to Andrew, your ticket, and as well as your campaign team. And I also wanted to thank EOC for hosting this event and all the people who are here. This is a really great turnout, and I'm so glad that you're here to take the time to get to know us a little bit better tonight. So I just want to introduce myself a little bit. So my name is Irma Valverde, and I'm from Long Island, New York, and I'm a junior pursuing a dual degree in business management and political science. And I'm also really honored to be the current vice president of the student body, and it's really been an amazing year serving you all, and it's also been a very busy 3 years as well, but I'm excited and honored to continue my journey in USG, and I'm so proud to stand up here as a candidate for president. I really wanted to do student government before I got here. I was a 4-year class president, and I knew that no matter what, I wanted to come here and make a change. Any type of change that it was, I wanted to bring students together, wanted to help students, I wanted them to reach their full potential. And my story started that same semester, my first semester here, as I was elected as the freshman class senator, and then I became a member of the executive board of the year after that, as student development chairperson, and now as the vice president of USG. The work I have done in USG ranges from a variety of things, starting from chairing a diversity task force as a freshman, sitting in on the Title IX Student Advisory Committee, and 2 other campus committees that same year. I also have been in charge of planning campus-wide events, both educational and fun, to bring the community together. I also have been tasked with recruiting new members, creating events within USG, hiring a student staff that is going to be efficient for everybody, and of course, advocating for students through a variety of measures. It is safe to say that through every role that I've had, it has given me a different perspective and experiences that I can use as president. So why am I running? I get this question very often. A lot of people kind of see the vice president role as where you end, but not for me. I want to continue this because I genuinely care about the students and I love this university. I honestly believe that we have to have a president who cares about the position that they're going to be going into and not just about trying to build your resume or to land an internship or whatever it may be. It's to continue the progress that we've been doing so well on, because for the past 3 years, we have been growing, and Ben and I have seen that since we were freshmen, that this organization is just getting better and better, and I do not want to stop there. And I also believe that we have to continue building a better UConn with you. It's not just about having a slogan that means absolutely nothing. It's about continuing the work that Dan and I have been doing this year, because we can't fix everything in a year, and we have to be realistic with ourselves. So I want to have that opportunity to continue the great work that Dan and I have been doing this year, because we've been working internally, we've been working externally, and everything that we have been doing has been genuine to the core. We've been recruiting members from everywhere on this campus, and everything that we do, it's because we have our hearts and souls into it, not because we need to do it, but because we care about students on this campus. And I want to also reiterate the fact that I think that as the current vice president, I know what it takes to have a great vice president, and that's why I believe in Lisette Johnson as my running mate, because it's not just about the years that you've had, but it's about the qualities within you. A vice president must be organized, must be level-headed, patient, kind, understanding, all of those things. Throughout this year, I've been tested multiple times, but I've realized the importance that it's not just about getting a checklist done, it's about being there supporting the organization internally and not always having to tell everybody that you're doing these things. It's about those things that happen behind closed doors. And Lisette really does make me proud. This past year, she has been nothing but amazing, a role model for everybody in the office, always a positive face. Everybody loves seeing her, and I really am proud to call her my running mate. So, our platform. Like I said, we want to continue the work that's being done right now. I feel personally connected to the initiatives that Dan and I have been working on, and I also know how to continue that work because of the position that I am in right now. In the past 2 years, anyone who knows me and sees the work that I've done, I actually get those things done. It's not about just sending emails out and waiting for something to happen or waiting 3 years for legislation. It's getting that stuff done at the moment. So, open source textbooks. That's something I really want to continue because that's something that my running mate, the president that I'm with right now, actually started his freshman year. And there's nothing more important than continuing that momentum that we have going right now, because I know how much Dan cares about it, and I want to continue that, because at the end of the day, no student should ever suffer by just buying the materials they need to be a successful UConn student. So let's keep the momentum going. Let's keep getting some revenue for open source textbooks to continue. Also, also, because of the current political climate, I am not afraid to say that I stand with undocumented students. There is no problem with that. And I will continue to meet with them, USG members, Dr. Gilbert, Chief of Police Reinhardt, Wayne Locust, Ellie Doherty, everybody in that group. We meet every single month. I'm willing to put in that time because this is not the time to pull back from our students, and we want to make sure every student on this campus is safe. It does not matter your legal status. If you are a Husky, we are here for you. And of course, favorite topic, state funding. So I've been by Dan's side for the past 2 years, and I'm able to learn exactly what it takes to work with government relations, Gail Garber, and the External Affairs Committee to continue to fight for the state funding that UConn deserves. With a 4% cut to the block grant and a proposed 7%, we need to focus on initiatives that will put pressure on the state to realize that UConn deserves this funding. I plan to continue these efforts so that one day students won't have to keep fighting for funding, and so that families across Connecticut, across the nation, and across the world aren't struggling for their students to get a higher education and a better life. And then, of course, the new things that we want to start looking at. The biggest one, parking policies. So the biggest problem right now is that there is no overnight parking on commuter lots. This is not fair to our students who maybe want to visit a friend or who maybe just don't feel safe walking from the other side of campus. So we don't want students to get penalized for these things. So we're going to work really hard to start looking at these policies and start changing them. And I know that the Stern-Gopal ticket are looking into student representation on parking appeals, which is really great. And I also, as president, would fight for this. Secondly, fixing funding policies. So we are facing budget shortfalls, but our priority is and always will be funding Tier 2 student groups. That's what LaSette's priority has been this entire year and what I've taken as an initiative to learn throughout the year as well. Given the reality that we do have the budget cuts that we're seeing, I want to prioritize student groups and hold USG accountable for the money that we are spending internally. And I hope that we can do this so that way students can really enjoy the great aspect of college, which is involvement. Involvement is a key aspect of it. And lastly, connecting students with administrators. I really firmly believe that USG does a really great job bringing students together to create change. And I want to make sure that everybody on this campus understands that we are a great resource to actually create that change. We saw that this year when the undocumented students and USG worked together, and now we're having monthly meetings. We're making so much progress just through 1 year, and that's not something that I want to change. The police have changed their policies, and undocumented students are getting lawyers from the UConn Law School, and we're going to keep fighting this fight because that's something that I personally feel really connected to. And then, of course, I just want to end up everything with the questions that we received from the Elections Oversight Committee. Thank you, of course, for sending these questions in. So we talked about conflicts and how we get over those conflicts within USG and how do I apply that to president. So first off, last semester, my job was recruitment and planning orientation. We saw that the involvement fair got postponed. What was the first thing I did? I emailed the advisor that same morning and tried figuring out if we could postpone elections because at the time, we only had 5 election packets out. And I wanted to make sure that we grew our Senate, that we had people who genuinely cared for this organization have the opportunity to sign up for it. So I did everything under the sun to make sure that we brought in new members, which is something that's never been done before. We invited people who weren't in USG to our organization, to that orientation, which actually allowed a lot of these people to stay in the committees. So I've seen that my work has actually impacted these people in committees and in Senate, and so much more. I also had the opportunity to communicate with multiple parties, with cultural centers, and all of them to make sure that we're getting a diverse group of students. And the reason why this is important for the presidential role is that sometimes you're going to get faced with difficult situations that come out of nowhere. And you have to be prepared to change all of that up. And last semester, we dealt with tragedies on our campus, with political climates changing, and I had to make sure that even with 2 jobs and being on 2 executive boards, that we put the students first and the organization first. Being president of USG is also like living in a fishbowl. And how do I positively represent USG in the student body? Frankly, I've been doing that already. As vice president, I have been living in a fishbowl already, and I've had all the experiences on this campus as an FYE mentor for SSS students, as vice president of campus affairs for Alpha Phi, and as well as an orientation leader and as a coordinator for the admissions office. So I know that I could be a good representation, a good role model for all students on campus, and also actions that I will take to make USG more transparent. There's no doubt we can continue making USG more transparent, but I also know for a fact that we have grown into an advocacy group without a doubt, and that is not something I plan on changing. And I'm really proud of this current administration, our senators, and of course, the committee chairs and committee people in general who have done all this work. Lastly, I know that for advocacy, I will continue to advocate as my entire position for student development was advocating for students. And I know that my past 2 years here have been all about working with administrators, helping students, and even helping incoming students. Although I am leaving in a year, I want to leave this place better than I found it. I bring a set of qualifications that no other president has ever brought because of my involvement not just with USG, but this entire campus to make this place a better place for all students. Thank you, and I hope you have your vote, and we hope to continue building a better UConn with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Irma. So as she mentioned, Andrew can't be here tonight, so Len, you're speaking on his behalf, and you also have 10 minutes.
Thank you. This is written in first person, so you're going to have to imagine that I'm Andrew or something while I'm reading this. Whenever I say I'm referring to Andrew Stern and not Vendopal. Good evening, everyone. I would like to start off by thanking the Elections Oversight Committee for being so accommodating. I found out Sunday evening after Hussington that a friend of mine from home had passed away. I needed to be home with my friends and family during this unfortunate time, which is why I'm unable to make it here in person tonight. Over the past 3 years, my time in the undergraduate student government has been the cornerstone of my college experience. I remember back to the involvement fair my second week as a freshman when I timidly walked past the USG table and my roommate pushed me in the direction of the group of students standing behind that table. After about a 5-minute conversation with them, I knew right away that USG was a place which would enable me to put my ability to work with a broad array of people and organizations to advocate for the interests of my peers. While it seems like that first involvement fair was just yesterday, I've had the opportunity to do a lot over these past 3 years. I have traveled to the state capitol in Hartford on numerous occasions to fight for the interests of UConn and its students. I have testified before state committees against deep budgetary cuts and reductions in financial aid, which would have been deeply harmful to UConn students and their families. I went back to Hartford to make the case for why all state public colleges should have sexual assault forensic examiner nurses on campuses. Thankfully, this bill passed, and our campuses are safer because of it. In addition to lobbying for the rights of students in our state capitol, I have had the opportunity to fight for fairer and more just treatments of students by our administrators. Since my freshman year, I've worked with the Community Standards Office to add student voice to the disciplinary process. As of now, a handful of pre-selected administrators are responsible for determining the life-changing consequences of students. However, this could be improved by the inclusion of a student perspective. Students already have representation on many university committees, and so it makes sense to include our voice on community standards as well. I would be lying to you if I said things had never gone wrong in the organization during my time here. My freshman year, I had my first meeting with the head of community standards, Kathy Cox, and asserted that we wanted student representation on community standards. We were shot down. However, we realized we did not have a concrete plan, and from then on, I have made sure that I have come into every meeting fully prepared with a plan in mind. As president, this is the mentality that one needs to have when meeting with everybody, from administrators to student groups. My continued desire to represent my peers is what has motivated me to run for president of the student body. Should I be elected, I plan to accomplish 5 key goals with the help of my fellow students, both in USG and out. First, it's important to me to improve the rather fractured relations between UConn and the town of Mansfield. I would like to facilitate dialogue between residents of the town unhappy with off-campus activity of our students and the students who understandably want to have a little fun on the weekends after a long, tiring week of studying. I believe conversation is critical and that we can reach a mutual understanding if we can get everyone in the same room. Second, I believe it's critical to hold the administration accountable. This year, for example, UConn failed a state audit, which found that the university improperly spent nearly $50 million of yours and your parents' hard-earned tax dollars. This is unacceptable, and UConn must answer for it. In addition to the importance of a student voice in the community standards process, student representation in the appeals process of parking citations would also result in a more accountable administration. While I cannot promise you a radical transformation in the, I'll admit, difficult parking situation, I believe I can secure the student perspective in the parking citation adjudication process, which many peer institutions already have. There also needs to be changes in parking by the infirmary. As of now, if the infirmary runs out of spaces, then there's nowhere else to park without risking getting a ticket. I'm going to propose that if parking runs out in front of the infirmary, the students are able to acquire temporary passes for parking across the street. Textbooks, more specifically the Open Source Textbook Initiative, is another major initiative that we want to continue to work on. This is the program that has been worked on by Ven's committee, and we want to continue to work on. I'm sure Ven will go much more in detail about it. He knows me so well. Finally, campus safety is also a major initiative that Ven and I want to carry out. Some of the things we plan on doing is ensuring that all fraternal organizations are mandated to have sexual assault prevention training and that there is better lighting on certain areas all around campus. I would also like to make USG a more transparent and accessible organization. It's important that students are reaping the benefits of their fees and that organizations have as easy a process as possible for claiming the money their groups are entitled to. Effective communication this year was lacking, and I will be sure to have our funding committee better respond to groups' inquiries. Ven and I have both been in USG for 3 years, and therefore have the most experience of any ticket. We have seen what it takes to get things done in the organization and can ensure practical solutions. Over the past 3 years, we've seen a declining retention rate and people far too often feeling uncomfortable within the organization. This is something that needs to and will change. I chose Ven because he has the ability to be the catalyst that creates changes internally. I'm blushing, Andrew, I'm blushing. For in order to see results outside of the organization, a strong internal structure needs to be in place, where there's a comfortable environment where people feel inspired to help the student body. Thank you again to Ven for reading this. You're welcome. And the EOC for being so accommodating. And I hope that all of you will consider voting for me, Andrew Stern, and Ven Gopal for President and Vice President of the Undergraduate Student Government. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. So that concludes the presidential debate. Thank you again. And in a few moments, we will begin the trustee debate. So if those candidates could come to the stage.
How about I just like float in the air? Sitting in the middle? Oh, this is easy to step off the back of.
I feel like I'm short.
Alright. I'll absorb it through my skin.
Are the candidates ready to begin? Yes. So, Christine, you'll start with your opening statement. You have 2 minutes.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for being here tonight. And thank you to the Elections Oversight Committee.
Is it on? Okay. My name is Christine Savina, and I'm a junior pursuing business management and political science dual degrees. Student government has become a core part of my life, not only because I'm passionate about helping students, but because I'm also passionate about political advocacy. From the protection of undocumented students to the environmental general education requirement, I have endless reasons to be proud of being part of our undergraduate student government. However, with the recent budget cuts, the $27.2 million budget cut for UConn for the next fiscal year, it's imperative to me that students remain informed and included regarding the financial processes of the Board of Trustees. Fund allocations in the past have been very non-transparent, and students haven't been completely informed about where their money is going.
As you've heard before, UConn failed their audit for $50 million, which is very unnerving, and it's scary that students don't know where their money is going. With the 31% tuition increase in 2015 that will go until 2019, it is also important to me that further tuition and fees do not increase. As most of us probably know here, housing fees went up earlier this semester, and international students got hit with a $200 fee last semester. Students are getting the brunt of these, of not only our state budget cuts, but also UConn's budget cuts. It's important to me that all students, especially our economically disadvantaged ones, are properly represented and are part of our fiscal process of UConn. It's important to me that the Board of Trustees and its constituents have open communication, collaboration, and integration. I think that's the key to success, being an undergraduate trustee, and I think that there needs to be bridges between USG, the common student body, and the Board of Trustees.
Thank you, Christine. George, you now have 2 minutes.
All right. First of all, let me apologize. I'm a little bit sick tonight, so excuse me if I have to take a few coughs. But other than that, good evening, everybody. My name is George. I'm a junior here at the University of Connecticut. I have 3 years of experience as a student leader on this campus, and I am asking for your vote tonight for the Board of Trustees. Before I get into all of that, though, let me just thank everyone for being here. The Elections Oversight Committee, which did such a great job putting this whole thing together. I know there was some stuff regarding how this was getting all paid, so I'm glad that we were able to settle that. But I also want to thank everyone who may not be here tonight that I've interacted with over the past 3 years, because let me be honest, it's been a long road to where I am today, and having met every single one of you in my time here has helped me to grow, and I thank you for that. Now let me get into the actual stuff. I have 3 main things that I want to push for you tonight. One is advocacy, the second is transparency, and the third is responsibility. You know, this student body is really big. It's 23,000 students, and we need to be transparent to those 23,000 students. There's no one person who has all the right answers. So to be able to create a system that allows us to spread that information, not only just at this campus, but among all the different campuses, is very important. And we need to be responsible. Ms. Savino mentioned earlier that we did have that issue with the audit last year. That audit made 15 recommendations to this university. I think it is important that we see those 15 recommendations followed through. And to go in line with that, I'm going to say to you tonight that I cannot guarantee for you that this university won't take any more budget cuts, won't have to raise tuition as a result, but I will say that we need to be responsible about it. We need to make sure that financial aid rises along with tuition, and we need to ensure that accessibility to that financial aid increases as well. Thank you.
Thank you, George. Josh, you now have 2 minutes.
Hello, everybody. My name is Joshua Tina. I know I'm not the most outspoken person or member of USG, so I'm going to go into a little bit of background. I'm a current USG senator. My constituency is commuters. I've lived outside of stores my entire life. I've attended US Smith just down the road from here. So I've really been around UConn longer than most people here could actually say they've been 4 years prior to my enrollment. I'm a former employee at the UConn Foundation, where I've raised countless amount of money for scholarships and such. I'm a former student body president at the UConn Hartford campus, and so I've essentially been part of UConn my whole entire life. I love UConn, and I want to do everything I can to to improve its future, really. When I graduated high school, it was a no-brainer for me. I really didn't consider any other universities at all. You can ask anyone. UConn was home to me. Why would I attend any other university when I've been here my whole entire life? So the reason I'm running is not because of the title or not because of my prior experiences or what's pointed me in this direction. It's because UConn has done so much for me, and I've gotten so much out of UConn, really, that I want to reciprocate the favor and give back to UConn. And I think this is one of the only ways I can do so, because as a USG member, while I have been somewhat inactive, it's just been, I don't know, more of a title to me. I haven't been able to apply myself as much as I'd like to. And so I want to devote myself into a higher position where I can actually make that big of an impact. To touch on the topics that I've focused on for my campaign, firstly is the budget cuts. Everyone's all aware of $41 million potentially. I can't promise, like George said, there's no promise that they're not going to happen. But we can do everything we can to minimize them by speaking out to representatives and senators like we have at Capitol Day, voice our opinions directly, and let UConn be heard.
Okay, so now I'm going to ask a question, and you will each have 3 minutes to answer. George, you will go first, and I will repeat the question for each of you before you answer. So the primary objective for the undergraduate student trustee is to work on behalf of undergraduate students. In doing so, the student trustee will often work extensively with administrators and other board members. Once elected, which administrator will you contact first to work towards your goals, and can you share some of those goals with us tonight? So George, you can go first, and you have 3 minutes.
So that's a very good question. And I will say that throughout my time here at the University of Connecticut, I've worked with a lot of administrators, but the one that I would probably reach out to first to contact would be Christine Wilson. I think that, Christine does a lot with student activities, and she has, very good interactions with the students, and that's definitely a bonus for her. And I really do appreciate the fact that Christine Wilson actually, takes the time to sit down with students and listens to students. Throughout her time here, I've known that students can just email her, and she will set up a time to meet with them, sit down and chat, and she has done that. In my time here at the University of Connecticut, I've met with her a few times. I know that, through my spring weekend work, she's been extremely helpful in helping us develop those connections with other administrators, as well as helping us to craft our policy. So the first administrator I would reach out to would be Christine Wilson. Sorry, can you speak to the mic?
The second part of the question was, so there are 2 parts. Which administrator would you contact, and then the goals that you want to work towards?
Okay, so and additionally, Christine Wilson has worked a lot with the student trustee in the past. She is the head of the student trustee election committee, so she knows exactly what the role of the student trustee is. And I think that it'll be important for her to have that knowledge as we work towards increasing transparency of the board to students, and in general, making sure that there's open lines of communication from the board to the students and from the students to the board. I think that's one of the most important things that we can ever have is communication between people, because again, no one person can ever make the right decisions. So being able to have that framework and have that knowledge to help me in creating that line of communication, probably through some sort of technological means, as well as physical in-person town hall meetings as the current trustee does, will be very helpful.
Okay, Josh, you're going to answer the question next, and I'm going to read it again, and just to remind you, like I reminded George, there are 2 parts to the question. So the primary objective for the undergraduate student trustee is to work on behalf of undergraduate students. In doing so, the student trustee will often work extensively with administrators and other board members. Once elected, which administrator will you contact first to work towards your goals, and can you share some of those goals with us tonight?
Sure. So I've actually met with my go-to man last night. His name is Lawrence Hobart. He's one of the department heads over by the science buildings. I don't remember his exact title, but he's a lifelong friend of mine. My best friend is his son. And just touching on one of the things he mentioned was addressing the budget cuts. He says it's always been difficult for UConn to address budget cuts in the past, and it is somewhat fair for UConn just to project tuition increases so students know how much they have to pay every single year. And there won't be any surprises in that sense. But the best way to address that would be to gather students, and aside from what we did, similar to what we did at the Capitol the other day, round up students, families, CEOs, everyone who really believes in UConn, and have them go to the Capitol and voice their opinions. So that seems to be the most effective way as opposed to rallies or protests, because protests are just protests. And actually, along with him, I would also meet with Director Megan Henran at the West Hartford campus, because she's been working very close with me ever since I transitioned from West Hartford to the stores, and she's always been supportive of my ideas and giving me the, I guess, segue to achieve my goals.
Okay, Christine, you will also have 3 minutes, and I will read the question again to remind you. The primary objective for the undergraduate student trustee is to work on behalf of undergraduate students. In doing so, the student trustee will often work extensively with administrators and other board members. Once elected, which administrator will you contact first to work towards your goals, and can you share some of those goals with us tonight?
So of course it depends on the initiative that I'd be working on. Assuming that it's financial, which typically the Board of Trustees works on, then I would definitely go to Scott Jordan, our CFO, and a very important member of the Board of Trustees. One of the initiatives I think is most important and I take the most seriously is our tuition. So as I stated before, we have about $27.2 million on the table for being cut to UConn, all of UConn, for the next fiscal year. And that concerns me, and I'm concerned for all students. But I'm mainly concerned for economically disadvantaged ones, and tuition increases, fee increases, and more overall expense increases for students. So I would like for less money to be allocated towards higher level administrators and their salary raises, which we saw in 2015, as well as our tuition increases. And I would like that to be reallocated towards student development, towards mental health services, which is greatly needed, and towards overall the welfare of all students, especially for those in need. If there is a social issue that deals more with students, then I would first go to Susan. I've looked at her in the past, being on Adam Kugler's trustee advisory committee and going to trustee meetings and knowing the trustees at this point. I feel the most confident in going to Susan because she is very interested in the student body concerns. She cares about students, and she's very connected within all of UConn. So she would know how best to go about social issues.
All right, there will now be 1 minute for open discussion. So,
between all the for. Okay, do I go first?
Yes.
All right.
Sorry, in the same order. So George, Josh, thanks.
All right. So I really do appreciate your comments, Ms. Savino, about the work in terms of the UConn budget. I will say, though, that we need to have a long-term goal because every year the state's going to want to cut our budget, and every year we're going to go up to Hartford and we're going to testify. We need to decrease our reliance on state money. Currently, 28% of this university's operating budget comes from the state, and when we look at other comparable universities, the best universities are at a place where they have lowered their state money aid to about 1 to 2%. And why does that benefit the student body? Why does that benefit the university as a whole? Because state aid is very unstable. It ebbs and flows with the politics of the state. And as a result, faculty are unwilling to necessarily work at a university that relies heavily on state aid because of the fact that they may or may not have, job security. Same with projects, different research projects. So I think that one of the things we have to work on is increasing the endowment, but thank you for bringing up the budget.
Josh, you have 1 minute.
So addressing the budget cuts, like George said, I actually agree with his point about being less reliant on state funding because it has proven to be very problematic in the past. And one of my other initiatives, which I didn't get to touch on, was introducing and implementing more renewable resources around UConn, such as green energy, solar panels, and just the first step to that, I believe, would be incentivizing students to pursue that adding the green palette to UConn, adding the green to UConn's palette, because if you go to places like Harvard, they have little receptacles for batteries, which is something that we have none of here. So where do we put our batteries? They'll end up in the wrong places. And so in order to go long-term, which if we would introduce renewable energy sources long-term, it would be more financially stable for us to, it would save us money in the long run and reflect much better on our school.
Okay, Christine, you have 1 minute too.
Okay, so to touch on the environmental concern, I think that's a great idea, but I think that with our current debt, that our money should not be allocated towards those initiatives, only because we're already working on the Environmental General Education Initiative, and we're also working on other environmental conscious policies as well. And I think that money should be allocated towards mental health and other forms of student development as opposed to our environmental policies. So I meet with students, I meet with student groups, and I know the far-reaching impacts that increasing tuition fees has had on them. So one of them is Emily Bermondi, and she, if I can quote her, she said that, students are getting out of college and they're facing the reality that we might not even get jobs and tuition is increasing all the time. And I've met with students who've had to take another job, students who've had to postpone their degrees another year. And so that's one of the reasons why I think we needed to reallocate expenses less to higher level administrators and towards students. And of course, tuition will always most likely have to increase considering Connecticut's $1 billion deficit that bleeds onto our $1 million cuts each year. And that is concerning, and that is the reality of UConn's fiscal state. But I still think that those expenses need to be reallocated.
Okay, thank you to all the candidates. Your second question. Josh, you will go first, 3 minutes to answer. Students are continuously frustrated with tuition increases. These increases now seem inevitable, which leads many students to doubt the ability of USG, the student trustee, or even the campus activism to stop the rises in tuition. As a member of the Board of Trustees, the organization approving this increase, how would you respond to these students? What will you do to prevent tuition from continuing to rise?
So I think one of the main issues that revolves around is how there seems to be a lack of transparency between the board and students. And speaking with the professor I mentioned earlier, he said that he rarely ever sees daily campus representatives at board trustee meetings, whereas oftentimes there's UConn Today, obviously daily campus is our most prominent news source. And so approaching students who are concerned with tuition hikes and who find the problems with tuition hikes, I would go about, first of all, explaining what the problem is, and because it's not always a good answer to give them. It's not always the popular answer that we have to decide on. And so whether it's for the benefit of the entire school as opposed to individual students whose tuition may be increased, it's for the better good, the greater good. And so going about the tuition hikes, I think the best way to approach that would be to tell them to get involved, to help fight against tuition increases, to help get the voice out as a husky, and if they want something done, you go out and advocate for it.
Thank you. Christine, you will now have 3 minutes to answer the same question. Would you like me to repeat the question?
Sure.
Students are continuously frustrated with tuition increases. These increases now seem inevitable, which leads many students to doubt the ability of USG, the student trustee, or even campus activism to stop the rise in tuition. As a member of the Board of Trustees, the organization approving this increase, how would you respond to these students? What will you do to prevent tuition from continuing to rise?
Well, as far as tuition increasing, it's very unlikely that we'll be able to prevent further tuition increases, but we might be able to prevent it from going up another 31% for another 4-year period. So students already come to me with that concern, and it's heartbreaking because I came into UConn an economically disadvantaged student myself, and I was very close to not being able to attend here. I was able to get emergency funding because at the time UConn was able to provide me that. So when students come to me like that, it definitely hits a certain nerve. But I try I try to be very thorough with them. I try to tell them about Connecticut's fiscal debt, and then I try to tell them how that has led to UConn's fiscal debt, and most students are unaware of that, and they're unaware of why this is happening. I'm glad to enlighten them, but I think that more students need to know about this. So what I want to do is I want to continue the Trustee Advisory Committee. I want more students to come. We have a very small showing, and I think that a lot of students don't know that it exists. So I want to go through the agenda with students. I want them to know why tuition is increasing or how we can do to prevent it from increasing as much as it is. And I want to keep open communication, collaboration, and transparency between the board and students. So as far as our fiscal policies are concerned, but yeah, so I definitely encourage them to be more involved with the Board of Trustees. I encourage them to research on it, to talk to me, and to talk to our current trustee, Adam Kugler, and to come to the Trustee Advisory Committee meetings, and to come to trustee meetings. A lot of students don't even know that those things exist, but they're great treasures, and they can do a lot of good for students. And as far as, you know, increasing their acknowledgement of UConn and its fiscal state. So essentially, I encourage them to become more involved, to become more aware, and I encourage them to understand why these things are happening.
George, 3 minutes to answer the same question. I'm going to repeat it for you. Students are continuously frustrated with tuition increases. These increases now seem inevitable, which leads many students to doubt the ability of USG, the student trustee, and even campus activism to stop the rise in tuition. As a member of the Board of Trustees, the organization approving this increase, how would you respond to these students? What will you do to prevent tuition from continuing to rise?
Thank you, Rishita. I'm going to say this right here, right now. I cannot guarantee you that tuition will not rise in the future. In fact, there's currently a Board of Trustees approved plan in place which sees our tuition increasing in the next 3 years. So I will say this. Tuition increases, as are many other issues, are not a black and white issue. They are not just plain good or bad. A tuition increase could mean funding for a lot of different programs at the university that in the end will increase the value of your diploma in the future. So it's not necessarily that we need to vote against tuition increases every single time that they are proposed. But I will promise you right here, right now, that I will vote against any tuition increase that does not also demonstrate an increase in financial aid or some other direct benefit to the students. Last year, the university allocated around $96 million towards financial aid. And I think that's great. That represents an approximate, I would say, 11% increase in financial aid allocation over the previous years. We need to continue on that trend, okay? And that means going back to the whole endowment thing, currently the endowment is less than 5% of the university's operating budget, and 65% of the university's budget is both state aid and student tuition and fees. We need to change that. We need to get to a point where the university does not burden its students as much with its operating budget, and to the point where it does not need to rely on the state every single year for money to keep everything running. So to answer your question, Rish, again, I cannot guarantee that tuition will not rise, but I will absolutely tell you right now, right here, that I promise every single tuition proposal that comes before the Board of Trustees, I will vote on in a responsible manner.
Thank you. Each candidate will now have 1 minute for rebuttal or open discussion in the same order that you spoke in.
So this is for George. It's more touches on your time management for the future and how you will address being such a busy guy. Because you're obviously a very busy guy and you always have a lot on your plate. And when we met recently earlier, a few days ago, you mentioned how you had plans for a promotion, a gap year, and all that such as you get promoted in your political position. So with all that on your plate, how will you go about handling all? How will you go about the responsibility of accomplishing 2 years' term worth of work in 1 year?
Can I respond to that? Okay. Is this cutting into my 1 minute or? Okay. So In response to that, I will say that's a very good question, Josh. I am a very, very, very busy guy. I do a lot of things on campus. In fact, I think a lot of you who first met me because of the fact that I was in every single USG committee at the same time, as well as being a senator, as well as being a deputy speaker last year. I'm busy. I'm everywhere. And I will say that I have been very successful in managing my time. I think that my record proves that. I've managed to get a lot of initiatives through, and at the same time, work on a lot of them at the same time. So I think my record demonstrates the response to that question.
Christine, it's your turn for your minute.
So this is for Josh. So I definitely loved having you in Senate last semester and external affairs. So I know that you got busy and you kind of separated yourself from USG. So how do you plan to reconnect yourself back in USG? Because it's so important to have a connection between the trustees and USG, which I'm sure you will, but I'd like to know how.
Okay, I don't necessarily think that there has to be a connection between USG and the trustee. And I have been somewhat disconnected from USG for personal issues. I've been participating in community service in my town and such, and focusing on my grades. But given the opportunity that I am elected as a trustee, I will prioritize that because that's a position that affects a much broader population of people as opposed to USG, which is, as someone mentioned earlier, a middleman between the trustee board, administration, and students.
Your turn.
Thank you. I appreciated the answers that both of you gave, and I think both of you gave very important answers. We need to get students more involved, and I completely agree with that. My plan to get students more involved is to increase the ways that they can get involved technologically, because of the fact that we have campuses scattered around the state. It costs a lot of money to travel between those campuses, and I think that that's unfair to a lot of the students who are studying at the regional campuses. So I think that we need to develop some sort of web platform to assist in that communication. But beyond that, I want to ask the other two candidates, what are your plans for increasing that student activity?
Is it him or? So I guess to jump on the idea of the regional campuses, a few senators and I are already working on a regional affairs committee in USG. We're already talking with regional campuses, we're talking with their USGs, we're talking with their students, and we're visiting their campuses. We're learning what their concerns are, what their ideas are, and they have some fantastic ideas. So hopefully we'll be able to get that done in USG itself, but also for the trustee advisory committee, I would like to increase representation from our regional campuses because not all of them are represented. And I think that's fair since it's the trustee advisory group.
It's actually funny that you mentioned regional campuses because when I was president as my freshman year, one of the main topics I wanted to introduce was unity between the campuses, having like collaborative events where all students from campuses, including stores, could all get together, watch a football game or something of the such. But regarding students at stores, I think just more direct advertisement to them and promotion of events to them would be the best way to gain their attention and unity.
Thank you all. So I'll be going into the last question. As a trustee, you need valuable face time with students at our regional campuses to understand your constituents' concerns, especially since the new residence hall and the Stanford campus will create a new constituency as well. How will you improve the communication between regional campuses and avoid being store-centered? And Christine, we'll start with 3 minutes.
So I feel like I'm answering these questions before they're asked. So as I said, we're already working on a regional campus committee for USG. I also want to stay very involved with USG because in my opinion, I think that it's vital that there is a connection between USG, the trustees, and the student body. As I said, I already visit the regional campuses, I work with their student governments, and I will continue to do so. I'm not going to let that go by the wayside if I'm elected. It's imperative to me that I, as well as the other trustees, hear their concerns. I at a regional campus last week, and it was very it was eye-opening to see that the issues that they have, not only the physical ones like the potholes and leaking ceilings everywhere, but also social policy issues as well. And I think that if our USG heard of that and our Board of Trustees, if it was at that level, if the issue was at that level, I think we could do a lot of good. We just need to start uniting all of UConn because we are all UConn. And we need to start making decisions and tackling these great initiatives together and not just being store-centered, as you stated before. And as I said, the Trustee Advisory Committee, I want all regional campuses to be represented. I want them all to be part of trustee decisions and having input. I think that, as a trustee, sometimes people think that the decisions are only on them, but I actually think that in order to be effective, you need to work as a team, as a large team, not only with USG, but also with regional campus representatives. And so that's going to be a core part of how I make decisions, if elected.
Thank you. George, you're next. So I'll repeat the question one more time. As a trustee, you need valuable face time with the students at our regional campuses to understand your constituents' concerns, especially since the new residence hall on Stanford campus will create a new constituency. How will you improve the communication between regional campuses and avoid being store-centered?
Sorry, can you repeat that last question? Last part of the question about the...
Yeah. So how will you improve the communication between regional campuses and avoid focusing explicitly on stores?
Okay, so my question is about the constituency part, the new constituency?
Oh.
Yep.
It's just mentioning how the Stanford campus will be having a new residence hall.
Okay.
So that's just a new base of constituents to consider.
Okay. So what I will say to that is I'm not necessarily sure that the new residence hall at the Stanford campus means that we have a new constituency. Those students have been there for a long time, and they haven't necessarily been heard or talked to in that time. When the Board of Trustees approved a plan to set the number of days of school for regional campuses from 4 to 5, adding Friday as a school day, it did negatively impact a lot of students because a lot of students at regional campuses work part-time in addition to their studies. And the fact that there wasn't that communication beforehand between the students and that decision-making body is something that is really regretful and something that I will work on. I've already spoken a little bit on this before. I think that it's imperative that we develop some sort of web platform to increase communication between the campuses, because it's not fair to expect any student to drive to any of those campuses. They are a far distance apart. I know this. I commuted between the Avery Point campus and Storrs campus for a semester last year. It's a long drive, and it costs a lot of money, and I don't think that we should put that burden on the students. So increasing that web, communication over web platforms is vital. And additionally, I will say that I'm prepared to put in the time to talk to students. I live in the Fairfield County area. I live fairly close to Stanford. I think that it's fair for me to say that when I'm in the area, I will definitely visit the Stanford campus and speak to the students there, speak to their associated student government. I think it's fair for me to say that I will be in the Hartford region a lot for my work. I will be in that area, so I will speak to the students there. I will speak to their associated student governments. Waterbury, I will speak to Waterbury students. I will speak to Avery Point students. It's imperative that we also institutionalize some means of communicating with the regional campuses as well, so that it's not just the individual person in that position who has to reach out every single time. Because, a different year means a new trustee. That trustee may not be able to necessarily take it upon himself or herself to go to each of the regional campuses. So we need to create that institutional means of communicating with the regional campuses.
To repeat the question? Sure. As a trustee, you need valuable face time with the students at our regional campuses to understand your constituents' concerns, especially since the new residence hall on Stanford campus will create a new constituency, or as we've clarified, will just expand the campuses. How will you improve the communication between regional campuses and avoid being store-centered?
Okay. Well, going to what George said earlier about students still being there, adding 310 person capacity apartment complex for students at Stanford. And going back to yesterday, actually, I was just at the Harvard campus because I still take classes there. And every now and then I'll check in with the current student government there. And one topic that always comes up is always unity. And we always think about and just reminisce actually about how effective the UConn Unity Summit was here that we had not last November, the November prior at the, where all the campuses, all the student government leaders from the different campuses came into stores, and we had like essentially a big summit presentations with networking and got to meet each other. And I don't know why we didn't do that this year because that was extremely effective. We still, I still keep in touch with all those other presidents. They all go to stores here now, so it definitely has some impact on those who attended it. And as far as instituting a means of connection between all the regional campuses, I think that's something that Adam Kugler also focuses on. He constantly drives, I believe monthly, between the different campuses to speak of representatives in each student government body and sees what they need. And I think that's been effective thus far. I mean, one person sacrificing his time once a month for the greater good of thousands is not that much of a hassle. And so I think as long as we keep doing that, it's somewhat effective.
Thank you. We will now be going into open discussion. So as a reminder, you each have a minute to respond, and you will go in the order that I asked the question. So Sabine, you're first. Or sorry, Christine.
Okay, so this is for George. So how do you plan on continuing the trustee advisory group, and what are your plans for that?
So that's a very good question. The trustee advisory group is currently a group that was formed by Adam Kugler, and they meet every now and then in the SOC conference room, if I'm correct?
We meet every month before the Board of Trustees meeting. We go over the agenda, which is about a binder full, and then we meet with student leaders from the STORES campus as well as the regional campuses.
Yeah, I definitely see that as a force for good. I think that it's important. I've spoken this whole time about getting input on all of these decisions because, like I've said, no one person can make all the right decisions. So as a trustee, I will be definitely looking into creating some sort of similar body to gather input from students before voting on crucial decisions.
George, you now also have a minute for your open discussion.
All right. Again, I've spoken a lot about creating some sort of web platform to increase communication between the campuses because I don't think it's necessarily fair to put the burden on any one student or group of students to have to travel between the different campuses, especially seeing that they're so far. I'm willing to do it, but I don't think that, again, it's fair to place that burden on students. So my question to the two of you is, how would you increase accessibility of yourself to the regional campuses in the event that you're unable to drive to them physically?
So I actually don't mind the drive. I love going out and seeing all parts of Connecticut. But if I were to address it in a different way, I think video conferencing always seems effective, as well as just emails. I emailed a group of current presidents from regional campuses earlier today. Got responses, I think, 4 out of the 5 within half an hour. So that seems to be an effective way of connecting with them by means that aren't through driving or transportation.
So I would definitely agree with Josh. I'm more than happy to go to the regional campuses. It so far has not been a burden to me at all. So with the trustee advisory group, what we found is that sometimes it is difficult for students to make it to stores. So we already use webinars, Skype, and email in order to keep constant contact with other student governments if they're unable to make the drive. As far as having actual events together and collaborating, sometimes we look to student government to fund those events, and we go through student government.
Josh, you now have a minute as well.
So addressing the problem that's come up about the difficulty and hardship of having to drive between all different campuses, in the election packet for the position of undergraduate student representative on the Board of Trustees, one of the main criteria for being in a position is being able to attend all student functions and the like in order to gain an idea of what's going on the campus and what's happening, what students are feeling about UConn. And so I think it's not directly a requirement to be able to go between campuses, but it's definitely something that shouldn't be looked at as an issue or as a task.
Okay, thank you all. So we will now be going into the closing. So if George would like to, you have 2 minutes to give a closing statement.
All right. Again, thank you for everyone who's been here to watch this debate. I think I see a few people who have driven some distance to be here. So again, thank you for doing that. I'm going to say that I believe that I am the most qualified and experienced candidate to serve on the Board of Trustees representing the undergraduate student body. I've had 3 years as a student leader, and I think that my record is very clear. I think that if you talk to one of the other student leaders on campus, you will hear that. I think that if you go to a lot of different areas of campus and say my name, they will recognize it. It's because I've been there. I've gone to all the events, I've spoken with students, and I have that track record underneath my belt, and I think that that speaks for itself. I will say that I also have one of the most probably extensive knowledges of how this university operates, about how USG operates, and if anyone here would like to ask me questions about exactly how I want to execute each of the proposals that I've outlined today, I can go through it with you in extreme detail and tell you exactly X, Y, Z, how I want to do it. It's because I've had that experience and I know exactly how this university operates. Thank you.
Thank you, George. Josh, it is now your turn. You have 2 minutes.
So my closing statement. Thank you all first of all for being out here and listening to this very long portion of the debate. I think that while George has kudos for having all the networking you had, what really matters in this case is the magnitude or the position of every person you know out there. I'm familiar with Megan Hanrahan still, and I have many contacts here at UConn, and my experience, I think all the members of the Board of Trustees can agree that the one thing they share in common, the one mutual trait about them, is that they all share a very devoted and dedicated passion for UConn, ambition about UConn for its future, and have seen its past, and I've seen those past as well. Like I said, I've been a student here, not at Storrs, but not at UConn, but at Storrs, Leo Smith High School. And so I've seen UConn before Storrs Center even existed. I've seen all these buildings renovated many times over, and I have a genuine love for this university. And my experience has benefited UConn in that sense. I've single-handedly raised over $30,000 for the foundation, and I intended to keep doing sober rides. I've driven thousands of students on late nights way past my bedtime to make sure they get home safe and have a safe night. And I've been watching games from Gamble since before I could walk, watching performances in Jorgensen before I could talk. And I've been bleeding blue, and I will continue to do so. Thank you.
So first of all, I want to thank everyone for coming out tonight. We definitely all appreciate it. The Board of Trustees is a very important body, and the undergraduate trustee is a position that I take very seriously. I've already put in the time, the effort, and the experience in being part of the trustee advisory committee, in going to meetings, in knowing the trustees, and fighting for the trustee bill, which would have added us 2 more students to the board, because I believe that students need more representation. When I leave UConn, I want to make sure that I've helped as many students as possible. I want to make sure that I have a tangible and positive impact on students, and I want to set a positive precedent for future undergraduate trustees. I've already proved that I have the ambition and the dedication for the undergraduate trustee position. And I put in enough time and experience in understanding what the position entails. As the co-founder of Women's Legacy, Student Coalition for Social Justice, and someone who represents students on Honors Board, Honors Council, who's involved with external affairs and University Senate, I definitely have the experience to represent students and push for the common good. I'm not only a social advocate, but I'm very well connected on campus, and I definitely want to bring those connections to the board so that I can get the proper input regarding decisions that the board makes. When I leave, I want to know that I've saved students, I want to know that I've helped students, and I want to know that I've improved UConn as a whole. This is of utmost importance to me, and I hope to do that as the undergraduate trustee.
Thank you to all 3 candidates. We are now going to welcome, yes, George?
No, I'm sorry.
Okay, we are now going to welcome the candidates for the Foundation Student Director position. Isabella Bachman, Brian Kirby, Maura Oy, Anthony Patalunas, and David Sanabria. If you could all take the stage. Each candidate will have 10 minutes allocated. Oh.
In theory, there's 6 of us, and there's only 4 of us. We're missing 2, actually. But there's 1.
Isabel Bachman, Mara Oy,
Brian Kirby.
Anthony Patalunas.
Okay, each candidate will have 10 minutes allocated for your opening statements, but it's highly advised his or her statement be 5 minutes. Isabella, you're up first.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for being here. My name is Isabella Bachman. I'm a sophomore here at UConn, and I'm a pre-sport management major. Now, I'm going to give you a little bit of background about myself for those who may not know. But before I catalog all the organizations that I'm in, I just want to make the disclaimer that it's not about the amount of organizations that I'm in, but it's about why. The organizations that I'm involved with at UConn I hold dear to myself because their initiatives all embody school spirit and really like what UConn is truly about. And it's for me about the people and the connections that I've made along the way. With that said, I'm in the Sport Business Association, Alpha Chi Omega Sorority, the Rugby Women's Football Club, and the Student Alumni Association. Now, the organization I think holds true to this position as Director of Student Foundation is the Student Alumni Association, as the pillars for the Student Alumni Associations are inclusive of alumni relations, traditions, and philanthropy. This organization's mission statement holds true to the statement, Students Today, Huskies Forever, which I think definitely correlates with the Foundation's work. And what I will say is that the Foundation's work includes philanthropy and alumni engagement. And part of that, too, also is educating members of UConn, current members, about why it's important to stay to their roots at UConn after graduation. Now, as a non-voting member of the committee, it is my goal to really amplify student education of what the Foundation is really about. Because for me, I truly believe that knowledge is power. And I will say that I'm not new to representing organizations, groups, and even companies. Over the summer, I worked for Skyhawk Sports Academy as a director of 6 different sports programs. And what I will say is that as the director, I was the liaison between the Massachusetts regional manager and the athletic director of the facilities that the company was utilizing. And what I also will say is that the relationship between the director, which is the position that I held, and the athletic director was dependent on whether or not the company Skyhawks got asked back. I'm proud to say that out of the 6 different locations that I worked for, Skyhawks company was asked back to all 6 for the summer of 2017. Additionally, my work with the Student Alumni Association involves me being a representative of UConn at the Case ASAP D1 conference. Now, this is the Council for Advancement and Support of Education Accelerated Student Advancement Program. Basically, what this is a combination of different student alumni associations of different colleges and universities come together and hash out different information on how to make their programs better. What I will say is that this past year, I did a presentation along with Brian Kirby, standing right there. And what I will say is that I am most proud that we had the highest turnout at our presentation and the best feedback. So what I will say that the organizations that I've been involved with provide me a diverse student's perspective since they are all very different, from club sports to Greek life and to other different student interests. What I also will say too is that my past experience from the Student Alumni Association and Skyhawks not only serves me well as not only being a representative, but a successful one. With that, I thank you for coming. Have a good night.
Brian, you can go ahead and give your statement.
It's kind of perfect that we're going after each other. It's kind of funny. So a lot of it's going to hear is going to be reminiscent of Isabella's. But so my name is Brian Kirby, and like everybody else up here, I'm running for the UConn Foundation Board of Directors. I am from Orange, Connecticut, and attended Amity Regional High School. I don't know if anybody's from Connecticut, it might ring a bell or two, but and that was prior to my acceptance into the UConn Honors Program. My current major is secondary education with a concentration in biology in the New York School of Education. And then on campus, I work for UConn Weslife in the Game South. And I'm the vice president of UConn Next Step, which is a club that teaches real life skills to people. This includes things like financial literacy, changing tires, tying ties, all that kind of stuff that you were supposed to learn in high school, but none of you ever did, kind of thing. So we kind of try to facilitate that through monthly meetings and presentations to different organizations like UNIV classes and student orgs and whatnot. I'm also the Vice President of Membership at the UConn Student Alumni Association, a branch of the foundation. So for those, how many of you have heard of USBall? I'm guessing a lot of you in a fairly USG group over here. And then you've heard of SAA, even if you don't know it directly. Founded in 1983, SAA's main goals are to promote and preserve UConn traditions and bridge the gap between current students and alumni. As VP of Membership, my goal is to increase our membership and to make sure our current members are involved with our organization. So I have held many events from SAA, including a mocktail meet and greet in the beginning of the year, a s'mores meet and greet. I've helped run the Weekend of Welcome scavenger hunt, and I've also choreographed many e-board and member retreats, including our upcoming tour of the Worth Champion Center, which is kind of a big thing with the foundation because they had a hand in creating that. I also represented SAA, as Isabella said, at the Case ASAP District Conference at WPI, where we presented on a personality test that we use with our members to kind of bring them together as an organization as a whole. My involvement in this organization is one of the main reasons why I think the Foundation Board of Directors is the perfect position for me. I've already worked with a large amount of the foundation staff and have helped plan and execute the events with great success. I've met with both the president of the foundation and the chair of the alumni committee on the board prior to this campaign about matters concerning SAA, so I already have a working relationship with them. This advantage will make the period of transitions even smoother, I feel. Also, one of the requirements for the student director position is attending SAA meetings. So not only do I attend general meetings, which I came to before this, but I also attend e-board meetings with Isabella. So I have a broader perspective on SAA and the foundation events as a whole. If elected, I would sit on the alumni committee on the board, and I plan to make my position as transparent as I can to help promote student engagement in the foundation events and also in the future. The foundation deals mainly with donations, but that does not always mean monetary donations. Time is also a donation, and it's something the foundations use very highly. I plan to use my position to increase the amount of people who know about the organization and in turn the amount they donate. This means increased scholarships, larger participations in programs like Ignite, among other things. Ignite is a fundraising effort launched by the foundation, for those of you who don't know, where student organizations compete to raise money for not only the foundation and UConn as a whole, but their organization as well, because a percentage of that money goes back to them individually. So it's a great thing for all the organizations on campus. What many students don't know about the foundation is that it actually helps their college career, even if they don't receive scholarships. 1/3 of what you experience at UConn comes from the foundation in some way, whether that be by scholarships, events, or filling the gap left behind by budget cuts, which was kind of a big issue talked about in the trustee debate, and I'm sure the presidential debate as well. Recently, the foundation agreed to raise $25 million to help build 3 new athletic facilities, which is a big thing for our campus being a very athletic group. There's a new soccer field going in, a new softball field, and also a new baseball field. Now that may sound like a lot, the $25 million, but last year alone, the foundation raised over $343 million, which combined with the Law School Foundation and the University Fund for a total endowment of over $377 million, which is really awesome. As we look back at the past leaders of USG, and of course with the Student Director Foundation of the board, I can tell you that the University of Connecticut has very good judgment in the leaders they choose. With that, I have great confidence that when the election is over 1 week from today, the students of this university will have made another great choice in who they choose to represent them. And I didn't have this written, but I do want to share this as well. So I just came from the NSA meeting where we talked about our strengths and weaknesses through the Strengths Quest personality test. And I kind of wanted to share mine with you because I think it does provide an ultimate look at how, what my personality is. And I think that's very useful for any position in government, whether that be USG or farther on. So my 5 strengths, which I really like, are context, input, competition, discipline, and self-assurance. So basically kind of an overview of that is I like to look into the past for issues for the present and understand what our mistakes were and move forward from knowing how we reacted in the past and how we can react in the future. I'm also very happy with the self-assurance and very proud of that one because that means that I understand what my strengths are, I understand where I can help and what I can do. So I just wanted to share those with you because I thought they were really awesome. With that, I'll pass it on to whoever's next.
Thank you, Brian. Mara, you have 10 minutes.
Good evening. My name is Mara Oy. I'm a freshman here at UConn in the honors program, and I'm running for the student director position for the UConn Foundation. My experiences at UConn have immersed me in its academic, athletic, and cultural communities. As a freshman studying actuarial science, I've experienced the excellence of UConn's academics and found a group of students with a common interest and a love for learning in the actuarial society. It's called Gamma Iota Sigma. Diving into UConn's athletic scene, I joined the running club and I enjoy running around the campus and competing at the meets with the team. I've competed at the North American Irish Dance Championships, and I'm a part of the Irish Dancing Club, sharing my Irish heritage with the UConn community at large. An important part of my high school experience was being a community service leader for Immaculate Conception, a homeless shelter in Hartford, and this gave me a strong foundation to continue serving in the STORES community. I'm running to be the student director of the UConn Foundation because I value what the foundation has done for the UConn community. I'm a Nutmeg Scholar here at UConn, which is funded by the foundation and its donors. This scholarship has had a huge impact on my life, giving me the opportunity to come to the school and focus on academics and involvement in clubs and activities. I want to be able to give back to the foundation by being able to help provide the opportunity that I was given to other students. So many of us here are supported by the foundation and all the donors of UConn. Achieving this position allows me to go say thank you to these donors and show them the impact they have made, not only on myself, but for the majority of us here. I've already begun to work with the foundation on small advertising projects. Last week I traveled into Hartford to record a radio clip at WNPR, telling donors thank you and how much of an impact they made on me. This week I did a photo shoot dressed up as a superhero. It was quite interesting to show how the foundation is transforming lives. And they talked about how what my superpower is and what I'm going to do for the future. I believe I truly embrace the definition of being a Husky. I'm very involved at the UConn already and plan to continue spreading my range of interests and hobbies to other fields in the future. As a student director, I will be attending events with the foundation as a representative of the student body. Having already been immersed in the academic, athletic, and cultural communities, I incorporate many of the interests that other students in the UConn community have and will be able to speak on behalf of them. In high school, I was on the student elective board for all 4 years. This position entailed us to fundraise for our class, of which every year we earned enough money to reach our goals for the class. As a community service leader in high school, I had to schedule 150 students for their required community hours. This position gave me organizational and leadership qualities that would definitely coincide with the role of student director. I also gained communication skills, having to be the mediator between the students, the director of campus ministry, and Immaculate Conception. I would be able to put these skills gained into good use as the student director, for one of the responsibilities of this position is to inform the student body of the efforts and the work of the foundation, as well as to communicate with the Student Alumni Association on how to help benefit them in fundraising. As student director, I would be a liaison between the student body and the UConn Foundation, building bridges to strengthen our community and give back to UConn as an ambassador for outreaching and fundraising efforts. As Herb Brooks once said, great moments are born from great opportunities. On March 1st and 2nd, you have the opportunity to vote for me for student director for the UConn Foundation. This will lead to moments over the next 2 years of which our UConn community will thrive because of everything that the foundation and I will do to give the student body the best opportunities we can offer. Achieving this position will allow me to extend my gratitude and enthusiasm for our university and show our donors the impact they have made on us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Laura. Anthony, you now have 10 minutes.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I'm Anthony Patalunas. I'm a graduate student in molecular and cell biology, and I'm the current president of the Graduate Student Senate. I'd like to start by thanking USG and the Elections Oversight Committee for giving the Foundation student directors the opportunity to speak this evening. My understanding was it hasn't happened in the past, and I think it's extremely important, especially for generally elected candidates, to have an official organized venue to speak and receive questions and feedback from voters. I'd also like to thank everyone still in attendance tonight. We have a lot of empty chairs now, so thank you for bearing through all of the speeches this evening and for continued support as we finish up here. The first two questions on everyone's mind when they meet a candidate are, why are you running? And what do you think you can accomplish in this position? My answers for both these questions are tied very closely together. I'm running because I firmly believe the UConn Foundation needs more student involvement and increased transparency to the student body, and that is precisely what I will accomplish if elected. I have a few anecdotes that I can provide, some context to my views on the foundation and engagement of current UConn students. So as I was collecting signatures, as everyone knows, signatures are required to stand up here on the ballot. So as I was collecting the signatures, the number one thing I heard besides, oh wait, what's my ID number, was, what is the foundation? I find, where's that? Oh, there it is. I find it's extremely troubling because when we graduate and we become UConn alumni, we have the opportunity to support UConn through the foundation donations. A lot of what all of us access daily gets funding through the UConn Foundation. Scholarships and fellowships, athletics, student experience, including community outreach and the honors program, study abroad, research programs, and so much more. But the knowledge of the connection between the foundation and these programs seemed vague at best to me from the student body. Perhaps not knowing about the foundation as a result of students not caring until they graduate, but I highly doubt that. I think it's a failure of the foundation to really engage the student body. During my time as GSS president, I've worked closely with the last president, USG president, Rachel Comboy, and this year I've worked with President Dan Bird, briefly, this guy over here, and neither of them have had any contact with the current foundation representative. If the governing body that serves as a conduit for advocacy and student voice does not have contact with the student representative to the foundation, then are students' interests really being appropriately conveyed to the foundation board and alumni? If elected, I will continue to work closely with USG as I have as the GSS president to identify areas where the foundation and USG as the representatives of the student body can work together. My goal will be to present to the Senate at least once per semester so I can receive feedback on where student needs intersect with fundraising efforts and the alumni connections. With that feedback, I can return to the foundation board of directors and the SAA and truly advocate for student interests across the university. But I don't think one voice is enough. Last year, while GSS president, I spoke with both President Herbst and Foundation President Joshua Newton multiple times about adding another student director seat to the foundation. Although I received comments of, we'd love more student involvement, and that happened, again, at least 3 times, when push came to shove, when it came to a vote, it was taken off the agenda, and I was told they would not add another seat to the board, even if it's a non-voting seat. What's wrong with that? My biggest short-term goal then is to work with the rest of the board, the foundation board if elected, to add another student seat. Every committee throughout the university, including the Board of Trustees, has more than one student seat. Board of Trustees has an undergraduate seat, a graduate seat, and has recently voted to add on 2 more undergraduate seats to the Student Life Committee. Why does the UConn Foundation not want 2 students instead of 1 to work with their board of directors? Having 2 seats would not only allow for a louder student voice at the foundation, it would allow year-to-year overlap with 2-year terms, so continuity and projects are not lost during student director transition, as is with the Board of Trustees currently. Although the student director seat is non-voting, I firmly believe that I can use the negotiation skills garnered through my tenure as GSS president and work with the UConn administration to convince the board that at least 1 more student seat is necessary. Furthermore, as of last year, the foundation houses the UConn Alumni Center, which serves as an integral role for all of us as students to connect with alumni that can help fund us jobs after we graduate. If we increase student body connection with the foundation, we will increase the student alumni connection and help our graduating peers, or you if you're graduating, more easily find gainful internships or employment. Although I consider increasing student involvement the long-term project as well as the short-term project, my long-term goals are the same as any candidate that's up here on the stage with me. I want to work with the alumni to increase donations for our endowment to the foundation, more efficiently invest the foundation's money to guarantee returns like those recently brought to light by the New York Times of Houghton College, and ultimately decrease the cost of education by increasing scholarships and strengthening our academic programs. I love UConn, and when I graduate, I want to give back to the university I've called home for many years. I want to see UConn succeed in every way possible so that every student that attends UConn feels the same great pride that I do when I say that it's my alma mater. But in order to do that as an alumni, I would want to know that the students I interact with, such as the student director of the foundation, really represent the student body's voice. So when you're on your phone next Wednesday or at a booth with a tablet, look for my name, Anthony Patalunas, on the ballot, because from my track record as GSS president, I can guarantee I will work with the student body to be the voice of the student body to the UConn Foundation. And I was told questions are not acceptable, so I will stay after to answer any questions that anyone wants to ask me. Thank you.
Thank you, Anthony. David, you now have 10 minutes.
Thank you. I'm glad that there's still some people here left. I know it's been a long night. And I'm also greatly humbled and greatly honored by the other candidates that are running. It's really a spectacular crowd. My name is David Sanabria, and I'm an electrical engineering major as well as in the honors program. I don't have any of the credentials that any of my other fellow candidates do, because this is my first semester here. I just transferred in from Tunsis Community College, where I decided to take that path to keep my education cheaper, which is something that plagues all of us. While there at Tunsis Community College, I actually do have one advantage over all my fellow candidates. I was the student director there at their foundation. You can look it up, www.tuncisfoundation.org, where a lot of the issues I've already faced and dealt with. One of the things that we started to do was we streamlined the application process for scholarships. We raised awareness through direct email marketing right to the students to let them know, hey, we're on your side. We're not some sort of weird, shadowy organization. We're looking to make sure that you do not have the burden of school debt,
to make sure that you get the encouragement that your hard work is getting paid off by being recognized with scholarships. I've dealt with board members. I've also helped find new allocations of capital from different donors. I've engaged with lawyers, consultants, CEOs throughout the process of raising funds. I've also even self-funded my own scholarship with money that I got a grant from NASA, and you can fact check that too, David Sinatra at NASA. One of the things that I would like to do as the student director is to have more engagement from the board members. We have a board of diverse and extremely talented board members, people who are kings in their industry, very accomplished. I'd like to see engagement from them with the different clubs, the different groups, the different schools to share their leadership and career experience. Another thing is, while at Tunxis, I did network with the student president and the student body. So I would get weekly emails from their meetings so that way I could be a better representative to the board and vice versa. And the last thing that I will absolutely push for as student director, book scholarships. The organization, the foundation, already gives out scholarships, but they're limited right now. So what if your hard work got paid off with a scholarship for a textbook? $250. It's just enough to take off some of the sting of textbooks, but also to give you that encouragement that your hard work is being appreciated and it is being rewarded. Thank you.
Thank you so much to all the candidates. And with that, we conclude our 2016-2017 presidential debate. Thank you, everyone, for sticking around and coming out in the first place. Thank you to the candidates for waiting until this late to hop on stage. We really appreciate your time. And thank you all. If you have any questions, I'm sure they'll be sticking around to take them. Have a great night.